techniques using a unique baton designed by Rapid Rotation Baton Systems. Designed for close quarter environments, it features 3 striking heads. Roy Bedard demonstrates several compromising situations and the defense tactics to use.
Talk to you a little bit about the Rapid Rotation Baton. This device is a baton, in many ways very similar to the batons that we carry in law enforcement. It has, of course, the striking capabilities of straight batons. It's got the blocking capabilities of side handle batons, but it's got some very interesting other features, like the application of these striking heads here, these 3 striking heads. And they are essentially designed for the close quarter environment. It can be a standing close quarter environment, or in this case, as I'll show you today, it can be on a ground defense situation in which you're going to be deploying the baton. Now, one of the things that makes this baton different, and in some cases even special to this environment, is the way that it's deployed. You see, the baton actually sits inside of a holster that snaps in, so it's not riding down alongside you, making it fairly easy to access from virtually any position. When it is snapped into place, it's actually locked so that it won't come out if your opponent is grabbing this thing and trying to pull it out. It's held pretty firmly into the case. We've developed several types of defense tactics against various positions, compromising positions that we're often put in when we're in a ground situation. And I just want to run through a few of those to give you an idea on how to deploy this baton. Now, our deployment formula is fairly simple. It starts off first by clearing your hips. That's the most important thing. Being able to access the baton and get to it with your strong hand is the critical component to making this thing work. The second thing is, once you deploy the baton, essentially what you're doing is trying to impact into an area that is holding on to you with the idea that you're going to create distance. And then thirdly is to create distance and to move to a higher position, essentially to a sitting position, a kneeling position, and ultimately to a standing position, where you can deploy other weaponry and other tactics to take complete control of the offender. So that's what we want to show you. We want to show you how to clear the hips, access the baton, move to a distance where you can take better control. This full straddle position is one of the most dangerous positions that we can be in, simply because he has full access to all of my weaponry on my belt. As you can see here, my only defense is to keep my hands high. So what I have to do is try to break down his balance. His idea probably here is to end things for me by driving very solid and very fast punches to the face. So what I'm going to do is to lift my head up, exposing the bony part of my skull, hoping that this deflects any impact that might come through, while at the same time bringing my hands high. Now, I want to try to control one of these attacks, so I'm going to reach out right now opposite of where my baton is, because that's ultimately my plan. By grabbing and controlling this hand, I'm going to actually step across with the opposite foot. Now, in doing this, I have essentially pinned his left side. By placing the other leg high, what I'm going to do is control his balance by just lifting my hip. From here, I start driving into the side. Now, in a real fight, it's not this static. We're still going to be fighting. He may have lost his balance, but he's very quickly going to start moving to attack me again. But you'll notice what I've done is I've been able to clear my hips. That gives me access to the rapid rotation baton. In this position now, I'm going to start driving the baton into various parts of his body that may be close to me, so that I can move to a little bit greater distance. Okay, now let's look at this from a little bit different angle. As you can see here, this person is off of me. Now I still have the baton deployed, and I have these striking heads that are ready to cause impact. So from this position, I can start thrusting into the target area to cause this person to stay off. If he grabs me, if he were to reach out and try to grab control of me, I can hammer strike into the top of the hand, forcing the release. I can hammer strike into the top of the arm, forcing the release. And as I continuously force this person off of me with the deployment of these striking hits, I continue to move to the next position, ultimately to the next position where I can rotate my baton and give my verbal commands. Get on the ground. Lay on the ground. This is a classic side pin. It's a very strong and powerful technique for the offender in this position. And if I were to try to use strength to get up from here, you'd have no trouble at all holding me down. And this is the essential problem. So I have to start thinking about escalating to weaponry. In this position right now, you see he has control. I being a left-hander, he has control of my weak hand, my right hand. That gives me access to the rapid rotation baton. So what I'm going to do from here is I'm actually going to turn my hips. And as you can see, the baton is already now exposed and available. By deploying the weapon, I just simply push down on the snap, I eject it from its holster, and it's ready for impact. My strike zone here is going to be right into the lats, right into the back area to cause this person to release. Now I can do this very hard, forcing him to release. As he starts to peel away, again, notice I still have impact with the other striking heads. I move to my sitting position from here. If he decides to re-attack and he grabs from here, I've got the ability to hammer strike as I continue to move to a standing position and maintain control of him with verbal commands. Okay, now, I'm not as fortunate as I was before, and he has control of my strong arm. This is the most difficult position that we have to try to access weaponry, of course. What I have to do here is I have to, at some point, get this arm free and clear my hip. So this maneuver that I'm going to show you here is designed to do exactly that. The first thing that I do, again, is I rotate my hips towards him, and in doing that, that gives me a little bit of torque at my shoulder. From here, I'm going to ball my fist, and like pulling back a punch, I'm going to snatch this thing, my elbow, right to my hip. Now, in doing that, I'm going to try to break that grip. If he's really got a firm grip here, and he won't, and I can't do it, I may grab his face and then bring the elbow back to the hip. So I'm going to force this here first. This is the first step to accessing the baton. Now, notice I'm still on top of my weapon, and I have to clear my hip. So what I'm going to do with my leg on the outside is reaching across. I'm going to hook his thigh, and I'm actually going to pull across. Now, what you'll see here is that that puts us in a twisted position, but notice that the baton on my back is exposed. If my hand is in close to my hip, I've got the ability now to deploy it. So by placing my hand on the holster, I break the snap, and I deploy the weapon. Now, in this position, it's still fairly compromised. I have to give myself space to impact him. So by stepping back across, notice again this fine target area. There's no way for him to block this impact as I start driving the striking head of the rapid rotation baton into the last to force him to release. Once he releases, I just slip out through the hole I've created. Again, if he starts to attack me, I want you to notice that the striking heads are prepared to deal with any type of a grip, grab, or control hold that he may deploy. As I move to a higher position, and I move to a control position, issuing verbal commands. Okay, let's take a look at this from a different angle this time. Maybe in an attempt to see the whole package as it comes together. Again, what I'm doing is I'm pushing my hips towards my subject. From here, I'm balling that fist, and I'm snatching in closely, my elbow to my hip. Once I clear his arm, I'm going to actually step across, hooking the thigh and popping my hip. I deploy the baton. From here, I step back across, start impacting into my target to force him to release, moving to the new high guard position, to a one-knee position, to a standing position, to a control position.
This is probably one of the most dangerous ground positions that we'll find ourselves in. You'll notice here, he's got a full choke. He's also got his body weight on top of me, compressing me. So what I have to do here, first and foremost, is protect my airway. And I'm going to do that simply by reaching up and grabbing this arm. Then I'm going to drop my chin into the crook of the elbow, forcing him, if he does start to compress, to merely compress the jawline rather than the soft throat. Now in this position, I don't really have an empty hand tactic to force myself out of this position. So I have to consider the formula that we talked about of clearing the hips. I've got to get him off my hips. I've got to access that baton. The way that I'm going to do that is by rolling in the direction of the arm that I'm anchored onto right now. And watch as this happens. As I start to roll,
Actually throw his weight. Now, he's done exactly what bad guys do. He reacts to that by really putting the pressure on, grabbing with the other hand. Again, I'm still in a very dangerous position. If I've set this up right, my jaw is tucked inside here, I've bought myself a few extra seconds. But you'll also notice that what he hasn't been able to do is to prevent me from accessing my baton. By deploying the weapon, notice that the rotator striking head is going to be smashed right into the top of that hand or right into that elbow to force him to release. In this position, his only defense really is to release. As he starts to release, I'm going to sit up, driving the baton back to keep him off of me. From this position, I'm going to move to a one-knee position as I rotate the baton. I may continue impacting him as I come to a control position and issue my verbal commands. So what we're talking about here is probably one of the most precarious situations that law enforcement officers face, and of course that's the close quarter fight. More precarious than that, even of course, is the ground fight. The ground fight involves very little space, sudden changes in danger to the officer, and typically, as we've indicated, we've used these strength-based tactics to deal with that very precarious situation. With a system such as this baton system and the ability to deploy it rapidly and to use these striking heads to force the release, we now have competency on the ground that we've probably never seen before. So this is new technology. It's a new concept. It's something that we hope catches on, something that every officer may find of value if they ever are in a situation like we've just shown you.
Now remember Roy's objective. Clear the hips, access your baton, and move to a more manageable distance and take control. Now let's move